The French Revolution was one of the most powerful turning points in human history. It did not only change France, it changed the entire world's idea of freedom, rights, and government. Before the revolution began in 1789, France was ruled by a monarchy under King Louis XVI. Society was deeply unequal. A small group of nobles and clergy enjoyed almost all privileges, while millions of common people carried the weight of heavy taxes, poverty, hunger, and unfair laws. Europe was still living under systems where kings had absolute power and citizens had almost none. But France was becoming restless. People were reading new ideas about liberty, equality, reason, and the right to challenge injustice. The revolution was not simply a random explosion. It was the result of years of pressure building under the surface. The French Revolution began because of a combination of long-term suffering and immediate crises. The social inequality was the deepest cause. France was divided into three estates: the first estate clergy, the second estate nobles, and the third estate everyone else: peasants, workers, merchants. The third estate made up 97% of the population, but they had the least rights and paid the most taxes. This created huge anger and frustration. The economic crisis made things worse. France had spent enormous amounts of money helping America win its independence and on the expensive lifestyle of the royal court. Debt was rising, food prices were increasing, and salaries were not. A terrible harvest in 1788 caused bread shortages, pushing ordinary people close to starvation. Meanwhile, new Enlightenment ideas were spreading. Philosophers like Rousseau, Montesquieu, and Voltaire wrote about the rights of citizens, the limits of monarchs, freedom of speech, and governments based on equality. These ideas gave the people intellectual fuel to question the old order. Finally, weak leadership played a role. King Louis XVI was not cruel, but he was indecisive and unable to handle the crisis. Instead of taking bold steps, he hesitated, and this created chaos. All these forces combined created a situation that could no longer be controlled. In 1789, the king called a meeting of the Estates General, a large assembly of representatives from all three estates. It had not been called in 175 years, so people believed change was coming. But when the meeting began, the same old unfair voting system continued. The clergy and nobles could outvote the third estate even though they represented only a tiny fraction of the population. This made the third estate furious. They decided to do something bold, something that had never been done before. They broke away and declared themselves the National Assembly, saying they represented the true people of France. When the king tried to stop them, they met in a nearby tennis court and took the tennis court oath, promising not to leave until France had a new constitution. This moment symbolized the beginning of open revolution. Tension spread across Paris, and rumors began that the king would use the army to crush the National Assembly. Ordinary people were terrified, angry, and desperate. On July 14, 1789, thousands marched to the Bastille, a prison that represented tyranny and the king's absolute authority. They demanded weapons to defend themselves. When the guards refused, the crowd attacked. After hours of fighting, the Bastille fell. This event became the symbolic birth of the French Revolution. It sent a message not only to France but to all of Europe: the people could rise up and defeat royal power. Soon, this spirit of rebellion spread to the countryside in an episode known as the Great Fear, where peasants attacked noble estates and destroyed documents that contained unfair feudal duties. After the fall of the Bastille, the National Assembly moved quickly to reshape France. On August 4, 1789, they took one of the most radical decisions in European history. They abolished feudalism, ending centuries of privileges enjoyed by nobles and clergy. A few weeks later, they issued the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, which stated that all men are born free and equal, that sovereignty belongs to the people, and that no one should be punished without fair laws. These were revolutionary ideas that inspired movements worldwide. But change was not easy. Many nobles fled, the economy remained unstable, and the royal family resisted reforms. When bread prices rose again, thousands of angry women marched to the Palace of Versailles in October 1789, demanding food and political reform. They forced the king and queen to move to Paris, symbolizing that royal power was now under the watch of the common people. Between 1790 and 1791, the National Assembly created a constitution that limited the king's power and gave the people more influence. But King Louis XVI secretly disliked these changes. In June 1791, he attempted to flee the country with his family to join foreign armies that supported him. They were caught in the town of Varennes and brought back to Paris. His escape attempt destroyed the remaining trust between the monarchy and the people. Many now believe France could not survive with a king who opposed his own people. Political clubs like the Jacobins became stronger, pushing for a republic instead of a constitutional monarchy. In 1792, Austria and Prussia threatened war to restore the French king. France declared war on them, but the early battles went badly. Fear and suspicion grew inside the country. Revolutionaries believed that traitors were helping the enemy. People turned more violent and more radical. In August 1792, crowds invaded the king's palace, and the monarchy collapsed. Soon after, France declared itself a republic. The king was put on trial for treason. He was found guilty and executed by guillotine in January 1793. Later, Queen Marie Antoinette was also executed. These moments shocked Europe and intensified the war. With enemies inside and outside the country, radical leaders led by Robespierre launched the Reign of Terror in 1793 to 1794. The government suspended many rights, saying drastic measures were needed to save the revolution. Thousands were arrested, and many were executed as suspected enemies of the state. This period was intense, chaotic, and extremely divisive. It showed how revolutions can become destructive when fear takes over. Eventually, people turned against Robespierre, and he was executed. The terror ended, but its impact remained strong. After the terror, France tried to build a stable government called the Directory, but it was weak and corrupt. The country was still at war, still economically unstable, and still politically divided. In this environment, a brilliant military general named Napoleon Bonaparte gained popularity. In 1799, he took power in a coup and ended the revolution. Napoleon promised order, stability, and national glory, and the exhausted country accepted him. Although he became an emperor later, he kept many revolutionary reforms alive, such as equality before the law and the end of feudalism. The French Revolution was one of the most important events in world history. It destroyed the old system of monarchy and privilege, spread the ideas of freedom and equality, and inspired future movements across Europe, Latin America, and beyond. It showed that ordinary people could challenge injustice and shape their own future. Even though the revolution had violent and difficult phases, its long-term influence on democracy, human rights, and modern politics is unforgettable. The world we live in today, with constitutions, citizenship, civil rights, and elected governments, is deeply connected to what began in France in 1789.